All right, we are talking about relocation styles. Relocation styles. We'll get into the relocation styles of most of our clients today. Different clients, different service providers, um, attract different clients with different relocation styles. Different service providers have different philosophies on what your relocation style should be. All right, that's one of the things that sets client fit apart. Even within the same industry, there might be a better service provider that has a better client fit, right? And this is typically one of those things in this particular industry that clients gravitate to. For us, a lot of our clients, their relocation fit is fairly hands off, right? There's a lot of clients where they have to go on tours and kind of cultivated, guided, what is it, like cultural integration programs and all that stuff, and that's cool. Our clients don't need to do all of that. Most of our clients have it figured out. A lot of our clients describe it as the same thing that they would do if they were to get a high-paying job across the country, right? And then they would just go take on that job and figure it out, once they got there, right? So some folks do come for visits. So we do get folks that'll come for visits first, check things out, maybe sign some paperwork in person, instead of remotely, and go from there. So there's really kind of three types of clients that we typically see. We have a remote due diligence client that does all their due diligence remotely. We have a third party edification client, which they typically know somebody else in the area already told them how great everything is going to be. And then we have a visitation client who is somebody who typically visits first, and then goes from there, right? Most of the time, it's the remote due diligence client. That's probably 80% of our client base, if I had to give it a number, right? And so, due diligence clients, there's a couple of things they all have in common. One of them is that they're looking for a permanent status, whether that permanent status is dual citizenship or whether that permanent status is permanent residency. Both take 7 years. And they understand that the faster they get their immigration started, the faster they get to 7 years, right? And so those folks will typically begin immigration immediately, right? And make sure that they got that clock running. From there, they'll take care of everything else. So those folks are normally very focused on that end result, which is typically dual citizenship, but sometimes it's permanent residence. And they understand that they're wasting time every moment that they don't have that status because it's 7 years of having the previous status as a prerequisite status. So either 7 years of having your ordinary residency permit can get you to dual citizenship, or 7 years of having your investor permit can get you to permanent residence. And so they understand that the more they talk about it and the more they sit around and do nothing about it, the longer it's going to take them to get there. There are no shortcuts, especially to dual citizenship, right? So that client is very kind of clear on what it's going to take to accomplish their goal. And they understand that the more time they waste, the longer it's going to take, right? So those clients do not come doing tours, they don't come doing visitations, they don't come doing any of that. The first time, they set foot here with intention, they already have a permit. Their clock has already started ticking. They are moving towards their goal, and like nothing is going to stop them from getting there, right? So that is one type, of client. As far as their mindset towards the entire thing. Now, beyond that, the other type of client that we typically see, and I would say that that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10%, are the visitors, right? So we'll get folks that will visit multiple times. Are they wasting the same time that the last client was worried about wasting? Technically, yes. Do they particularly care about it based on their goals? Maybe not, right? Because some of those clients aren't really thinking about status, right? They're just looking to start something new. I'll tell you what, most of those clients, most of the multi-visiting clients, typically also have like it's not an ulterior motive. They have a romance motive as well, right? So there's a lot of women and men who have an idea of like, let me find my person. And so finding their person almost becomes part of the requisite for relocation. I personally don't recommend it, but I only tell people to do when there's a legal consequence. Right? So if that's what they want to attempt, who am I to stand in their way? It's actually been pretty successful. So based on all the years that we've been doing this, and based on the success that people have gotten, if I'm being 100% honest, men are more successful than women. But of the men, 100% of the marriages are still together and have been successful. So who can argue with that? For the women, about I'd say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 80%, right? Have been successful and have lasted. So on both sides, I mean, it works if that's what you're about. My wife is a local Kenyan, but I didn't come here with the intent. It naturally kind of just happened. Like, love just happened, and that was the end of that. I didn't come here looking for that as part of like my focus, but we do have clients that like that's part of their focus is like I'm rebuilding my life, and part of that means I'm finding my person, and they do, right? And so for the guys, typically within a year they do. So, I mean, it works, um, but that's a small percentage of our overall business. All right. And then about at the same percentage are the folks that, oh, thank you very much, are the folks that utilize tours for the sake of cultural immersion, right? So cultural immersion folks, they may come do like a 2 week tour, go to the market, go like everywhere else. We actually have a partner of ours that's like what they specialize in. Like they do the tour thing, and they specialize in that, and they do it really, really well. And so there are those folks as well. Sometimes those folks have they need to have their confidence boosted in the process, and I think that's partly why those folks don't resonate with us as much, and why there's such a small portion of our business, because we really, really cater to people who are locked in. We really cater to people who have the confidence, who know what they want, and who want to execute. And then we do that extraordinarily well, right? So a lot of the folks that need to do a tour and they need to kind of come back and forth with that, there's some confidence loss in whatever it is they're trying to do, or there's some confidence issues in it, and you can get that like in the way they talk while they're on the tour, right? And you're like, all right. And so for us, we really like the fact that we have 100% success rate over more than a decade, and part of that is us, but part of that is also our target client, right? Our target clients are squared away people, right? So, and they understand, that if they follow, the lead of the specialist, that everything is going to be all right. And so the way that they operate, plus the way that we operate, leads to our success. So if we were to take on a client who was not a target, a perfect fit, target client, then there would be a disconnect between the operations, right? And then that could lead to a failure, to relocate. So if we see that disconnect, and we scan for it, if we see it, then we'll just refer that person out to somebody else, maybe somebody who's better suited, to work with them. So we don't accept, just any client, and we only select so many clients at a time. So if you go to our website, if it's green, that's fine. Then we have great capacity. We're good to go. If it's yellow, then we're running out of capacity. We have a lot of clients in that moment, but we won't onboard enough clients to damage, our ability to service the clients, right? That's the whole point of limiting the clients, is to make sure that we have all the resources we need to give stellar service. So if it's yellow, we're approaching that point. If it's red, you will be waitlisted if we accept you at all, right? So if it's red, that means we're at capacity, we're waitlisting only, and you can have a initial consultation and all those things, but we will not take you on immediately until we go ahead and make space in our capacity. All right, so that's typically how we handle that. So we have our remote due diligence folks, and they typically do due diligence from wherever they are. And a lot of them have said the same thing. It's kind of great because when you have a target client and a target audience, a lot of them respond the same way. They say the same things, and they have the same concerns, which allows you to get better and better and better at taking care of them, right? And so a lot of them do say the same thing, that they just kind of think of it as like they got a new job and that job requires them to relocate. And so they relocate, work the job, and they're good to go, right? And that's a pretty apt descriptor, especially for bond ladder clients who are able to relocate and never have to work again, right? So so it is like getting a new job, right? If you're buying the bond ladder and then those coupon payments from the bond get paid to you monthly, and you're getting paid enough money that it covers all of your household needs, then it is kind of like getting a new job, because now you're being paid in that place where you relocated to, and that is your primary income, right? And it's passive, and you don't have to worry about it going away, all right? And so those folks, they typically focus on whatever their passion is, right? So one of the latest people that we brought over came over with a few dogs, had a few dogs, a few cats, and all of that stuff. And so we had to get pet passports and all of that stuff, and make that process happen. But now she's breeding dogs like she's always wanted to, but could never afford to, back home, which for her is Boston, right? And she just was never able to actually do it. She had to work. Bought the bond ladder, those payments started before she even got here, which that was cool for her, because I guess she kind of wanted to see how things, how it played out, right? A lot of people, if they haven't invested in bonds before, like, it's hard to wrap their head around, the ability to do that. So she got the bonds first thing, started building her house. The bond ladder came to fruition before the house was built, and so money started getting deposited in her Kenyan bank account before she even got here. So she was able to see on the app, or log in, to the internet banking. She was able to actually see the checks coming from the government before she even arrived, which of course boosted her confidence through the roof, right? So then house got done, she arrived, there was already a bunch of money in her account, because we had finished on ladder, I think in like 4 months, because we got lucky with her where there were a couple months where we could get both bonds. So in like 4 months, we had all 12 months worth of bonds. Typically, it takes at least 6 months. And then if there's a month where neither bond qualifies, then that would push us into a 7th month, right? So it takes about 10 months to build a house. We typically like to have the bond ladder done by the time the house is done. And so that's exactly what she got. And so that made it super, simple for her. But now she does what she wants to do, because she doesn't have to work anymore, right? So that is, working. She already has a wait list, for the puppies, right? So she did her first breed. She does cane corsos. She has a wait list, to buy these puppies. They have a solid, lineage or whatever. So they're worth quite a bit. So already there's additional income coming in from her breeding the puppies, and then her experience in bringing the pets here allowed her to kind of realize how easy it is to fly pets around, period, right? So now that's also part of like her business model. Now she knows that she can fly pets from one country to the other, and she knows what it takes to do that now, right? So All of it came together for her, and now she's doing what she wants to do. So it really was like she got a new job offer, took that job, and relocated, for the job. So that's how they see it, right? Visitors typically, the visit spurs their desire to relocate here, right? So visitors are typically, randomly here for whatever reason. Someone invited them to safari or like that, or you know, family. For me, it was my uncle got married, right? Married a Kenyan. So for me, I suppose that was technically the visit that spurred things. I had already been doing due diligence in Africa though, so I was really a due diligence person. But somebody kind of directed me towards Kenya, and I suppose that would also wrap me up into kind of a third party edification uh, client as well, because somebody told me about the place, but they didn't tell me to relocate there. Like our real party edification folks, it's somebody already lives here and they're telling you like, hey, my life is amazing. You need to move here too, right? And then you trust them enough, right? They have whatever position in your life to the point where when they say that, you're like, oh, well, if you're saying it, then I believe it, and then you move forward from there. All right. I don't know why this thing is trying to make me choose a sticker. What is this? All right. Sorry about that, YouTube. It forced me to do that. I don't know what that's about. I couldn't even see your comments until like I interacted with that. That's the first time I've ever seen that. Very weird. All right. So, any questions on relocation types? We're doing these like short, focused like lives. Yesterday it was only 30 minutes. I'm already halfway through 30 minutes. So, if you got something to say, I know a lot of y'all be waiting until like the end of the live. You got something to say, you got a question to ask it now. So it's a bond ladder, right? So it's six bonds that are strategically selected based on our criteria and the criteria that like we agree upon, and their payout is as well, right? Because bonds pay out twice a year. That's why there's six bonds, right? So if they pay out every 6 months and you have six strategically positioned bonds, then you get 12 months of payments, right? You get 12 months of payments that actually fall on different months. Because you can just buy six bonds and then they all pay out in the same month and you get a year's worth of money in 1 month. And now you got to manage that money for the whole year. Probably not a good idea, right? So they have to be strategically designed so that that money comes to you every single month. And typically our minimum is 10 years. The government, all right? The government's going to guarantee it for the next 10 years to pay you. And then at the end of the 10 years, you actually get the money back because it's not a stock, it's a bond. So if you don't understand how bonds work, it's worth Googling. But when you do a bond, it's like a reverse loan. You're the bank giving the loan to the government. The money you make is the interest rate on the loan, but that interest rate is being paid to you. Loan you gave the loan, right? So you're getting paid the interest rate. And here there's kind of a gold standard called an IFB bond. The IFB bond is tax exempt. That's what makes it the gold standard. So you're getting paid that money from the government, which is using you as a bank, right? And when you take a loan from the bank, what do you pay? You pay the principal plus interest. So they take a loan from you, what are you getting paid back? Principal plus interest, right? So they're going to give you the interest for the term of the loan, right? The maturity of the bond. And then at the end of the bond, they give you the money that you put in back. So you get it all back plus the interest, all right? So that's how bond works. Beautiful instrument when you're getting really high interest rates. Typically, because bonds are so safe, the interest rates are low, right? But because they're so safe, and because this country is moving to tier one country, what used to be called a first world country, they're doing that right now. Like they're building a nuclear power plant right now. They're doing their highway infrastructure right now. They're building a brand new international airport right now. They're number three in geothermal energy right now. Right, like right now they're doing it. They're transitioning to tier one economy, and that always takes money. And so, because that takes money, the bond interest has been increased. And so, the lowest bond that we've ever put on a bond ladder, the lowest interest rate has been 12%. The highest interest rate has been 18.46%, which is incredible, right? And that was an infrastructure bond, so that's tax exempt, 18.46% on a bond, right? So incredible interest, and that's what's allowing people to get the bond ladder and just live here for the whatever the maturity of the bond is. Bonds come out in maturities of 5 years, 10 years, 10 years, our lower limit. So 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, and 30 is the max, right? So theoretically, you could be in a situation where you actually have 30 years of government payments coming in, where you wouldn't have to worry about working for the next 30 years, right? Our best bond ladder so far has been 25. We haven't, no one's gotten a full 30 on a bond ladder yet, but it's theoretically possible. Because each bond has its own maturity. So the year that we mention on your bond ladder is the maturity of the youngest bond. So when one of those bonds is going to go away from the ladder, that's the time frame that we're giving you, right? So we have people who have 30-year bonds in their ladder, but not every single rung of the ladder. Not all 6 bonds are 30 years. So we can't call that a 30-year ladder. It's the lowest rung, right? So we have folks, though, that the lowest rung on their ladder is 25 years. So they have a 25-year ladder. No, it's government. There are corporate bonds. We don't deal with them, though. It's all government bonds. Right, but we're talking about relocation. So that concern might be relevant if you're trying to live in your host country and make money off the bonds, and then you're worried about currency fluctuations. But if you're relocating, then you live in that country. So the only currency that matters is the currency in that country. Right. Yeah, it's relocation. Now we have business clients that literally set up businesses here and never ever come here, right? They get a business, an investor permit, so that they can legally set up a business. They hire local people, which is great for the local community, obviously, and then they operate their business remotely, right? So they just have multinational businesses all over the place, right? And that's just part of how they make money. And now for them, if they're going to do a bond ladder because the interest rates are great, but they are not here, that's when they have to check the spread, right? But the spread is so extreme depending on where you're coming. Like if you're coming from the United States, it's like 4% that you would get on a bond. So now the spread is between whatever percentage you're getting here and whatever percentage you would have gotten there. So if you're getting 16% here, then it's, the difference between 4 and 16 has to be eaten up by the exchange rate for the exchange. People took loans, especially when the 18% bond was up. We had folks that took loans from, I remember the specific loan from Navy Fed that a lot of people who had Navy Fed was taking, and it was like Navy Fed was offering like 7 point something on this loan. So they would take a 7% loan from Navy Fed and buy an 18% bond that was tax exempt, right? Remember that infrastructure bond was tax exempt. So they would get an 18.46% bond, and they would pay the difference in the spread, right? So the loan would be paid for free, and then whatever was left beyond the percentage of interest that their loan was calling for would be their profit, right? So they were literally just printing free money, right? Because it wasn't their capital that they put into it. So at the end, the loan is paid back, right, off of the coupon payments coming from the bond, But at the same time, they also get that principal back, remember? So at the end of the loan, it's like they get the lump sum from the loan right back, and they got it all for free, and they made money in the middle, right? So it just depends. It depends on what, what your purpose is and what you're doing. Yeah, yeah, no, all investments have risk. The risk in bonds is sovereign default, which means that the government doesn't exist anymore, or they default on their obligations. That's never happened under this government. So like Turkey did a sovereign default, Greece did sovereign default. This government has never defaulted, so there's that. Um, the other risk is liquidity, right? So typically bulk bonds, you have to wait for the maturity. So you wait for, if it's a 10-year bond, you wait for 10 years, then you get your principal back, but you're getting the interest payments, up until that point. If you need it all for some reason, right? Somebody needs a surgery, there's some emergency, you got to go to the secondary market and sell your bond to somebody else who wants your bond, but they miss it. Remember, bonds are only open for a month, and then they close, and then you might never see that bond again. So maybe somebody wants your specific bond to complete whatever portfolio ladder they're building, and so they come in on the secondary market to get that bond from you. Or maybe they have your bond and they want more of it, so they got to come in on the secondary market and get that from you. But you're going to lose, right? They're not going to pay you exactly what they're going to make on the bond, because then it's like a wash. Like, what's the point of even having it then, right? So they're not going to pay you interest plus, the capital. So they got to make something. So there's going to be some kind of percentage that you lose when you go to the secondary market and sell that bond, and so that becomes a risk. We actually never recommend people do that. It's like a risk that's pretty easy to mitigate, because you can take a loan out against your bonds, which is what rich folks do all the time. They take loans against their assets, and then they let those assets pay back the loans. So you can do that with bonds. You can take, margin loans. You can take loans against bonds as the asset, and then do what you got to do with it. So for us, it doesn't necessarily ever make sense that somebody needs to sell the bond on the secondary market when you can just take the loan, and if the asset doesn't cover the loan, then they take the bond as the collateral for the loan, right? So you know if the bond is a million local units of currency, they're not going to give you a million in local units of currency in the loan. Maybe they'll give you 750,000 or whatever. And then if you default, then they'll come take the bond, and that's it. It's a done deal. So there's really no reason to, other than trying to get a better deal. Maybe there's really no reason to sell the bond on the secondary market, in our opinion. Because if you just need a little bit of liquidity now, then why wouldn't you just take a loan against the bond? As long as all the interest rates lined up and all that stuff. But that's a good question. I don't think anyone's asked that yet. So good question. All right. Anything else on the relocation style? What relocation style are you? Hmm? Can you do your due diligence remotely? Does it feel like just relocating to get a job type of thing, and you'll make it work when you get there? Do you have that kind of confidence? Do you need to be handheld? Do you need somebody to go showing you around the culture and taking you all the places, right? Or do you need somebody that, is a trusted confidant to tell you, hey, I did it and it was great, so you should do it? What kind of a person are you? What is that? Analyzing? Yeah, yeah. I hear that. I've lived in a lot of places. I never visited any place other than Kenya. and it was like I said, it was unintentional to visit to Kenya. For me, it was all remote analyzing. So I lived in China for 2 years. I just did my due diligence. Found a real cool, like second tier city. So I didn't live in like one of the big cities. I didn't go to Beijing. I didn't go to Guangzhou. I didn't go to Shanghai, any of those places, or Hong Kong even. So I lived in a little off city called Xinhui, and I learned Chinese on the floor. Like I got there, started learning on the street, and so that's always been me. I've always had that level of confidence where I could go to a place where no one spoke the language and figure it out, right? So I went to China, Xiamen City, and there for 2 years. I learned Chinese on the ground while I was there, and that was it. I moved to Rodney Bay, St. Lucia. Didn't know anybody. Just decided I was going to do it. Did it. Lived there for 6 months. It was great. Did the same thing in Butuan, Philippines. Moved there for 6 months. It was great. So like I've always been able to do remote due diligence and just go and call it a day. Some people can't. Some people there's a fear that holds them back, which it is what it is. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, the thing is going to take time. Yeah, you can go to our website and take our free assessment, and see if you qualify to work with us for anything. Right. So there's an immigration assessment. So if you're looking to do immigration with us, that assessment is there. There's a merger acquisition assessment for you guys who like to buy companies and like to do remote company stuff. That M&A assessment is also there. And then, as you guys all know, we do generational wealth and offshore trusts. And so, those folks that would like to do generational wealth and get their trusts going and all that stuff, that assessment is also there. All the assessments are free. You can kind of, go take them all if you'd like, just to see, what it takes to do any of them. Over there on the YouTube. YouTube. Looks like YouTube. Looks like would be like the new standard. Either but it's some sort of family. Myself, and then I found love. I got married. I had a baby. Blah 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 blah. I'd be relocating solo, so no pet passports or offspring was just good. Yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah, if you're solo, I mean, most of our solo folks can just take the plunge, right? Most of our folks are just like, all right, cool, let's get this thing set up, and let's go from there. We have a lot of solo bond ladder people too, who like just get to chase their dreams because they don't have to worry about money for the next 10 or 20 years. The last solo bond ladder we did got a 20-year bond ladder. And so they are living their absolute best life. They get money every month from the Kenyan government that covers all of their household needs. And they've just been like chasing their dreams. They've been doing everything they've always wanted to do. So that's really, really cool. We love those stories. They make us feel pretty good. I'm debating between Accra, Ghana, and South Africa. Wanted to visit Kenya first. What's the best time to visit? Aha, so you're a visit person. So it depends. It depends on what your goals are and what you want to see, right? If you came in December, for example, it would be very hot. If you were coming to the beach side, even, Nairobi, it's warmer, it's like summertime. And there'd be a ton of tourists. There'd be a ton of parties. There'd be all of that stuff. So if that's what you want to see, that's the tourist season when those things happen, right? If